Let's be honest, VBA UserForms get a bad rap. People think they look like something straight out of a Windows 95 time capsule, complete with grey boxes and that oh so classic Times New Roman font. Yikes. But here's the thing, while VBA itself hasn't had a glow up in decades, design principles have, and that's what we're tackling today. In this video, I'm going to flip the script on outdated design and show you how to build a sleek, modern login page that wouldn't feel out of place in a fancy web app. We'll cover every step, from PowerPoint magic to hover effects, and even some advanced tricks to make your form look and feel like the 2020s. Not only will you end up with a killer form, but you'll also pick up techniques that will seriously level up your VBA skills. So grab a coffee, maybe a snack, and let's dive into this UserForm transformation. Now just a quick note before we jump in. By the end of this video you'll have a stunning, fully navigatable form, but the actual login functionality won't be covered just yet. If you'd like to see how to adapt this form into a fully functional login system for an Excel workbook, then let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas. As always, we'll start by opening up the Visual Basic Editor. Once we're in, we'll right-click in the Project Explorer and select Insert User Form to create a new user form. Next, we'll resize the user form to give ourselves some working space. Don't worry about getting the exact size perfect right now, we'll adjust it later if needed. For now, we'll just make sure it's big enough to work comfortably. Now let's add a multi-page control, grab it from the toolbox and drag it onto the form, sizing it to roughly half the width of the user form. Again, no need to obsess over the precision right now, we're just setting up the basics. To create our pages, right-click on the tabs at the top of the multi-page control and add a total of 4 pages. For now, we'll just give them some arbitrary names to just keep things organized. The multi-page control is a fantastic tool that allows us to create multiple pages within a single form. It's what's going to give our login page the sleek, modern look we're aiming for. Now to build our form, we're heading over to PowerPoint. If you'd like to follow along with my exact layout, I've provided all the margins and guides you'll need to align your controls perfectly. To add a guide, simply right-click an existing one and select either Add Vertical or Horizontal Guide. Feel free to pause the video here while you set those up, or work along with your own layout. Next, we'll grab a graphic for the login page. For this, we'll head over to Storyset.com. Storyset is an amazing website offering SVG images you can customize. You can adjust colors, tweak individual elements, and even animate the images. Many options also come in 5 different styles to suit your application's theme. For ours, we're going to search for login and find one that resonates. I'll pick this one, adjust it to a deep blue color, and download the SVG file. Once downloaded, just drag it directly into your PowerPoint presentation. We'll start by creating a rectangle that spans the left half of our entire layout. Position it and size it according to your guides. Next, bring the SVG graphic to the front, center it within the rectangle, and fill the rectangle with a lighter shade of blue. Already it's starting to come together. Now we'll build the login page elements. If you're wondering why we're doing this in PowerPoint, trust me, it'll all make sense soon. First, we're going to create a full page rectangle and color it white. We're just going to zoom in a bit here to make alignment a bit easier, and then we'll add a small rectangle for the header. Set the text to black, font size to 18, and background to white with no border. Copy the header rectangle and adjust the font size to 8 and change the text color to grey for the subheader. Add labels for username, password, and remember me, keeping the text black. For the forgot password link, underline the text and match its color to the blue of our little man's shirt over on the left. Add a sign up section with grey text on the left and blue text for the sign up to match the link. Next, we'll build the input boxes. These are simply curved corner rectangles with a light blue-grey border, a half-point border weight, and a white fill. Copy this shape to create the password field, and again for the sign-in button. For the button, we'll use the same blue as our graphic again with a slightly darker outline, and set the text color to white at a font size of 8. And that's the majority of our login form done in PowerPoint. Now comes the important question. How do we get this into the user form? Don't worry, it's actually easier than you might think. Watch closely. First, we'll select the left section of the design in PowerPoint and copy it to your clipboard using Ctrl-C. Switch over to your user form in the Visual Basic Editor and add an image control. In the image control's picture property, click where it says None and paste the image using Ctrl-V. Double-click the corner of the image to auto-adjust its size to the size of your image, and just like that, your PowerPoint design is now in your user form with all of its quality intact. Next, resize your user form to fit the image. Make sure the image's border style is set to none for a cleaner look. Then adjust the width and height of your multi-page control to match the dimensions of the image. Align the left position of the multi-page control to the width of the image for proper placement. Now let's clean up the appearance of the multi-page control. We'll remove the tabs at the top by setting the style property to none, and finally resize the overall user form width to match everything up neatly. To add the sign-in controls, return to PowerPoint and select the entire right side of your design. Use Control click to deselect the button for now. Don't worry, this will make sense in just a moment. Copy the selected elements with Control C, switch back to your user form, navigate to the correct page of the multi-page control via the drop-down menu, then paste the copied elements into the picture property of this page. At this point, your user form should look fantastic, but we're not quite done yet. It looks great, but it's not interactive. So let's fix that next. Let's head back over to PowerPoint to work on our button. Start by moving the button element to the bottom of our slide and creating 2 duplicates. We'll leave the original as is, then for the first duplicate, change the fill to white and the text to black. For the second duplicate, also change the fill to white and the text to black, but make the text bold using Control B. These 3 versions will serve as the default, hover, and click down effects for our button. Now switch the user form and add 3 image controls. Paste each of the button images into one of these controls. After pasting, remove the borders and resize the controls as needed. To align them, use the alignment options at the top of the VBA editor. Select Align Top and Aligned Left to ensure that they stack neatly. For positioning, you can manually set the position values in the property window for precision. Alternatively, adjust the grid size and snap the buttons into place, or you can turn off grid snapping and position them freehand. I'll stick with rough positioning here to save some time, but for pixel perfect alignment, you could overlay the form from PowerPoint and align everything precisely. Finally, we need to name these buttons following a specific naming convention. We'll do button home sign in, and then button home sign in underscore hover and underscore down. I'll explain the reasoning behind these underscores and naming conventions a bit later on. We still have one more control to build in PowerPoint, and that's going to be our button to show and hide the password. Start by inserting an icon and searching for an eye symbol. Drag it to the bottom of the slide, set its color to grey, and position and size it so it fits snugly in your password box layout. Next, we'll create the hide version of the button. So rotate the eye by 45 degrees and then use the snap points to draw a diagonal line across it. Rotate the eye back to its original orientation and then match the line color to the eye. Ensure the line is perfectly aligned to the middle and center of the icon. Now copy the eye and line combination, change the line color to white, and move the white line to the back. This step ensures that both the show and hide icons are identical in size and alignment. Group the elements together for easier handling, and then once grouped, copy both the show and hide icons into separate image controls in your user form. Carefully align these controls and move them into position so that they integrate seamlessly with your layout. Before we name our controls, let's create the input text boxes. Turn off grid alignment temporarily for precision here. Then create a text box that matches the size of the password field. Set the height to 18 and align the bottom of the text box to the bottom of the password field. This ensures that the text will appear vertically centered when typed. Set the backstyle property to transparent, remove the border, and set the special effect property to flat for a clean look. Run the form to check the positioning. You should see the input box looks like it's properly aligned. Copy this text box to create another one for the username field and position it appropriately and adjust as needed. Now let's quickly set the password character for the password box. Press the Windows key plus dot and access the Windows emoji menu to select the bullet character. Assign it as a password character for the password text box. Finally, name your text boxes and buttons using a consistent naming convention. Using the name of the password text box, add underscore show and underscore hide to the names of the corresponding show and hide buttons. This naming structure will make their functionality easier to reference later. I'll explain the reasoning behind this convention in a later step. Finally, let's add a checkbox for Remember Me. Insert a checkbox control, set its backstyle to transparent, and remove its caption. Position it wherever it fits best in your layout. Next, let's ensure the tab order is correct. Right-click on the background of the user form, select Tab Order, and reorder the controls as needed to make navigation intuitive. For all interactive controls, we'll set the mouse pointer to a finger icon for a polished feel. Change the mouse pointer property to Custom, and then browse for a suitable mouse icon. Quick note here, the icon image should have the pointer positioned in the bottom right quarter for a natural alignment during use. And then we'll apply this setting to each of our interactive controls on our user form. To make the Forgot Password text interactive, simply create an empty image control and position it over the text. Make it transparent, remove the border, and assign the same custom cursor to make it feel clickable. While we're at it, let's ensure the checkbox cursor is also correctly set. Now we'll just do a final check of the user form. Check that everything looks good and feels interactive, especially with the cursor changes. However, the sign in button still feels a bit static. So next we'll add a hover effect. Before moving on, let's quickly just name the user form, assign it a meaningful name so it's easier to refer to in the code later on. Let's start just by demonstrating how to create a hover effect for a single button. Once you've got that down, I'll show you a method to make this reusable for multiple buttons. First, double click the sign in button to generate its default event method. This will come up as before drag over. We don't need this method, so ignore it for now. Instead, click inside the method and select mouse move from the drop down in the top right corner of the code window and delete the before drag over method entirely. In the mouse move method, set the Z order of the hover image to MSO bring to front. Z order refers to the layering of controls, so this ensures the hover image appears on top when the mouse hovers over the button. Next, select the hover button in the drop down and create a mouse down method. Here we'll bring the down image to the front by setting its Z order to MSO bring to front. This creates the pressed effect. Now let's ensure that the button resets to its original state. So in the mouse move method of the down image, bring the hover image back to the front, and finally for the multi-page control, use its mouse move method to return the original button image to the front. This ensures the button returns to its default appearance when the mouse moves away. When you run the user form, you'll see the button now feels like a proper hover button, with the image swapping seamlessly between its different states. Great! However, 12 plus bulky lines of code for each button is not really efficient or friendly for us as developers, so let's make this reusable by building a modular solution. To make our hover effect reusable, we'll use a class module. If you're not familiar with class modules or you're possibly intimidated by them, don't worry, I'll guide you through the process step by step. Start by creating a new class module and naming it CLS hover button. First, declare 4 variables with events. We'll do button main for the main button image, button hover for the hover image, and button down for the click down image. Then we'll have frame underscore page. This is going to be our multi-page control to handle the mouse events. These variables will handle the button states and interactions. Next, create a public subroutine called create hover button. This routine will assign the controls to the class. So first, we'll pass the following parameters. We'll have form as a user form, main image as the image, and page as a multi-page. Inside this routine, assign the passed main image to the class's global button main variable. Use the naming convention that we established earlier to automatically reference the corresponding hover and down images. For example, here we append underscore hover to the name of the main image to reference its hover counterpart and underscore down for the down image. And then we assign the page control to frame underscore page. Now we can rebuild our hover functionality by creating events for each of these images. We need to make sure that we're passing the correct arguments to these methods, so we can just copy that from what we built in our form. If we just copy everything from the form, it'll be easier to follow what we need to do. Then we can just repeat what we did in our form code and adjust the Z order of each relevant image. So in the image main, mouse move, we bring the hover image to the front. In the hover image mouse down, we bring the down image to the front. In the down image mouse move, we bring the hover image back to the front. And for the frame page mouse move, we bring the main button forwards. Once the routines are complete, your class module is ready. It'll handle all the hover effects for any button you assign to it. Now that the class is done, let's see how to implement that into our form to create our hover buttons. So let's jump back into the code for our user form and clean up. We'll delete all the hover effect code that you previously wrote for the individual buttons. We're replacing it with something much cleaner. First, we're just going to declare a global private variable at the top called hover buttons as a collection. This collection will store all the hover buttons that we create at runtime. Next, open the user form initialize method. To keep the logic for creating hover buttons organized, we'll create a new subroutine called create hover buttons. Inside this routine, we'll initialize the hover buttons collection, declare a variable hover button as an instance of the class hover button class that we've just built. Create a new instance of class hover button, and a colon here essentially just runs whatever is after it as if it were a new line of code. So then we run hover button.create hover button. We pass in me as the user form, the button home sign in as our main image, and then the multi-page control. And then we add another colon and add that button to our collection. By using this class, what previously took 12 lines of code now fits into a single compact statement. Alright, fine. With the colons, it's technically 3 lines of code, but we're calling it 1 for simplicity. Now we'll call the create hover buttons routine from the user form initialize to set everything up when the form loads. Run the form and you see that our hover button effect was working perfectly on the sign in button. Next, we'll tackle creating a similar reusable system for showing and hiding the password. So let's dive into that. Since we're building a login form with reset password and sign up pages, we're going to need several password fields throughout our form. To handle this efficiently, we'll build another class. But first, let's just review the logic again behind the functionality. So double click the show password image button to generate its default method. Replace everything after show underscore with just click, open and close parentheses. It's odd that the click method doesn't actually appear in the drop-down list, but rest assured the image control supports it. In the click method for the show button, we'll bring the hide button to the front using its Z order, and we'll set the password character property of the corresponding text box to a blank string. Now for the hide button, repeat the process, and for this we'll bring the show button to the front, and reset the password character property of the text box to the bullet character. When you test the user form, you'll see the password field toggling between hidden and visible states. Now let's package this logic into a class to make it reusable. This process is similar to what we did for our hover button, so I'll try to sort of move through this a bit quicker. We'll create a class called class password field. In the class module, declare two with events variables for the show and hide image buttons. Declare a variable for the password text box control, and add a global variable to store the password character. Next, build a public subroutine called create password field. This subroutine will accept a form as a user form instance, text password, this is going to be the text box for the password field, and an optional password character parameter defaulting to the bullet character. We'll assign the pass text box to the class variable. Here we're going to assign the show and hide buttons based on the naming convention we used before. So we append underscore show and underscore hide to the name property of the pass text box to identify the related buttons. And then we set the global password character to the provided default value. Finally, we just need to write the click routines for the show and hide buttons. So for button show click, we'll bring the button hide to the front and set the password character of the text box to an empty string. And for the button hide click, we bring the button show to the front and reset the password character property of the text box to the global password character. With this class in place, now you have a modular way to handle show and hide functionality across your entire user form. Now again, we'll go back to our user form, create a global password field collection, create a subroutine to create password fields. We'll set our collection to a new collection. We'll dimension a new password field of our class and set it to new, call our create password field function, passing me as the user form and text password as our text box. Here we want to use the default dot so we don't need to pass that third variable. Then we'll just add that to the collection and we're done. As you can see, our password field is still working as it should. Now that our primary login page is done, we need to set up navigation to move through some other pages. For example, we'll start with the forgot password process. First, name the transparent image over the forgot password text as button forgot password, and then double click to generate an event method. Again, delete everything past the control name and replace it with click. Inside this method, set the value of the multi-page control to 1. The login page is the first page, and since the control is 0 indexed, 1 refers to the second page. Let's test it quickly, and as you can see, it jumps to a new page, which is currently blank. To save time, I've already built these other pages in PowerPoint. The process for building these is practically identical to the first page, so I'll speed through this part. A quick tip when creating additional pages, copy controls you've already made to ensure you have consistent sizing, styling, and mouse cursor behavior. Plus, it just saves you a lot of time. Remember to stick to the same naming conventions as before, using underscore hover and underscore down for your button images. To make the new button work as a hover button, simply copy the hover button setup code and change the primary button assignment. It's that easy.
Nice.
Next, for transitioning to the third page, we just need to use the click method of our hover button and set the multi-page control to the next page number. Again, I'll fast forward through the creation of this next page. Don't forget to use the correct naming conventions for the password fields here, as that's what makes the class method work seamlessly. To make these new password fields functional, just copy the setup from our previous password field and change the text box it's referencing. Repeat this for the password confirmation field as well, and let's test everything now. Okay, our buttons aren't working, so let's figure out what's going on. The issue is that we didn't call our create password fields routine from the initialize method. The original password field was still working because I didn't remove the direct button code that we set up. Once we fix that, we also need to make sure that the default password character on the new fields is set. Let's test again, and now they're working perfectly. Finally, let's quickly build the last page. This page will just confirm that the password reset was successful and include a button to return back to the login page. Once that's done, you can see that the form is now fully functional in terms of navigation. At this point, you could stop here, but remember that transition effect that I teased in the intro? Let's take it to the next level by adding that. This is a bit more advanced and the video is already running a bit long, so I'll try and explain this next part as clearly as possible, but I'll be speeding through it a little bit. While this transition effect could be done in a standard code module, I prefer to build it as a class for its reusability and organization. Now let's build the class that will handle our page transition effect. We'll create a new class module and name it class page transition. First, we'll declare a multi-page control, a user form, and a variable for our animation speed. These will serve as the backbone for our transition logic. Next, we'll create an initialization method. As we can't use the built-in class initialize method to pass parameters, we'll build our own initialization routine. This method will accept the UserForm and MultiPage controls as parameters and assign these to our global variables. Then we'll set a default animation speed, and for this we'll just use 50. To make the animation speed adjustable, we'll add a property for it. You can easily do this in a class module by going to Insert, Procedure, and choose Property. Using the property let method will allow the speed to be updated if it's greater than 0. And a corresponding property get method will let us retrieve the speed if needed. We won't need it for our application, but it's just good practice to include it. And now for the main event, the routine that performs the page transition. The logic here involves creating a temporary frame control, duplicating the target page's contents into it, and then animating it across the form to simulate a sliding effect. We'll need variables for a duplicate page control, an iterator, and a start, end, and current positions variable. We're going to set the duplicate page control to the output of a helper function. This helper function is going to duplicate our page and pass it back. So we're going to build this as a private function which accepts the page number and returns a control. To start, declare the frame, a subcontrol, and a new subcontrol as controls. We're going to be setting a number of control properties which may not apply to every control, so use onErrorResume next to easily move past those. There are much more graceful ways to handle this, but this will do for the purpose of the video. Then we need to create new frame controls in the UserForm with forms.frame.1. Make sure to watch your capitalization with these strings. We'll name it as a duplicate of our existing control and use true to make sure that it's visible. Our frame height and width need to be the same as our page control. So the left position is going to be the left of the page control plus its width. This positions it off the side of the page, and then we just make sure that the top is aligned as well. Now set the border style to none, the special effect to flat, and get the picture of the target page. This is our page's background that we built in PowerPoint. Then to duplicate all the controls from the new page, we'll do a loop for each subcontrol in MultiPage.pages, new page, .controls. Then we iterate through each control. We set our new subcontrol variable as frame.controls.add. And we'll need to get the prog ID of the control we're duplicating. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a way to grab this from an existing control, so I'm just going to make a helper function to do this for me. I'll just finish this by naming it a duplicate of the current control and then set its visibility. Now quickly, our prog ID function will accept a type name and return a string. For this, we'll use a select case of the control type. We'll return a case for frame control for a text box, and rather than type all these out, I'll just paste in the rest of this. Pause here if you need to copy all of this down. Finally, we'll just create an error if something unexpected is passed in. And now we can get back to the duplicate method. So we've built this helper function. As we cycle through each control of the target page, it will create a new control in our frame of the same type. But now we have to make sure that the new control looks the same. Let's set a bunch of properties for our new subcontrol here. So we'll set the left, top, height, width, picture, caption, value, forecolor, back color, font, visible, and enabled properties. Now we can close off the error handling with onError go to 0, set the output of the function to the frame, and our duplicate page function is done. Then we just grab the start X position as the left of the duplicate control, and the end position will be the left of our existing page control. Now we can finally create our animation. So using our iterator, we'll do a for loop to loop from 1 to our animation speed variable. In the loop, we'll set our new X position to the start X position minus start X position minus end X position, and then multiplied by I over the animation speed. Then we just need to set the left position of our duplicate page to the new X position and use do events. Finally, we set the page of our multi-page control to the new page number. We'll make sure that our multi-page is aligned properly, and then we can remove the duplicate control. Let's serve its purpose now. And that's the transition class. I know it's a lot of work for a relatively small visual effect, but it really adds a polish and makes the form feel much more dynamic and professional. Now it's time to actually apply the transition effect to our form. This is the fun part where everything comes together. First, we'll create a global variable for the page transition, which will be an instance of the class page transition class, not a collection this time. Next, we'll build a routine to set up the page transitions. It will create a new instance of the class page transition class, then initialize it by passing in the UserForm and the MultiPage control. And then you can set the animation speed to a value that works for your desired effect. For this example, we'll just use 100. To ensure the transitions are applied, call this routine from within the initialize method of your UserForm. Then wherever we were switching pages directly, we'll replace those calls with the page transition.transition2 method, passing the page number to transition2. This will trigger the smooth sliding effect for all of your buttons. Now let's run the form and test the final product. You'll see those transitions are now in effect. If the speed feels a little bit off, you can easily adjust this by changing the animation speed. Higher numbers will slow it down and lower numbers will speed it up. As we test, you might notice some details that need tweaking. For instance, input boxes here may show the borders while sliding. To fix this, we'll update the border style property within the class. Similarly, if the special effect isn't being set, we'll add that in as well. You may also notice a flickering effect on the image to the left. To address this, rather than using an image control, set the background picture of the entire form to include both the left section and the white background on the right. This ensures everything is properly aligned and eliminates that flickering during transitions. And there you have it, a polished professional transition effect that adds a layer of refinement to your login page. And there is our fully navigatable animated login page, complete with sleek hover effects and password visibility toggles. It's modern and it's ready to elevate your Excel applications to the next level. As I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to see how to turn this into a fully functional login system for an Excel workbook, then just drop a comment below. I'd love to know what you're looking for next. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your fellow Excel enthusiasts. Your support helps keep these tutorials coming. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, this is your VB Tutor signing out.